off of mute and to participate. And please participate. I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. Today we're talking about networking skills, what I call networking to success. I find that way too many people think they're networking and what they're doing is not working. And I apologize for the pun, but it was intended. And I find that most people do a very poor job of it. And they want to do it well. It sounds better than cold calling because there's clearly nobody wants to do that. And so everybody's avoiding doing the hard stuff or what they think is the hard stuff. And networking sounds so much warmer and fuzzier. And so they try to do a lot of that, but yet it's not always working the way they should. So what I'd like to do is do some defining first and then get into how to do it better. And I want to give you some down and dirty techniques that you can use. And one of my goals is to have everybody leave today at around 2 o'clock with somewhere between 10 and 25 very specific people that you can network with. So, okay, first question. And if people that want to play come off of mute, and I will call on you if you don't play, that's okay. Let's try to define it. What is networking? What is this thing that we're all trying to do that we call networking? So what is a good definition? Somebody.
Building relationships.
Thank you, Trina. Building relationships has a lot to do with networking. Good. What else is networking?
Creating and maintaining relationships.
Okay, it's creating and maintaining the relationships. Clearly, I like that. Thank you, Ahmed. What else?
Connecting with like-minded people.
Okay, it's hopefully connecting with like-minded people, although often they're not. There's a little potluck in whether they're like-minded or not. What else is networking?
I would say expanding your circle, but that's pretty close to what everyone else has said.
Okay, it's expanding your circle a little bit. I like that. That's part of it, Joy. Thank you. What else is networking? So here's what I think it is. I'm sorry, Shwandi.
Yeah. Looking for opportunities to help other businesses, other people in business.
Thank you so much for that answer.
Yeah.
That's the best answer I've heard so far. So here's my definition, and it's fairly straightforward. Networking to me is opportunities to meet new people that maybe I can help in some way, and maybe they can help, and maybe they can help me in some way, period. And the key there is the sequence. I'm thinking first how I can help them. Secondly, that they may help me. Most people, when they go to a networking event, they're there for one reason only. You know, how many people have ever been to like a chamber, business card exchange or chamber networking event, right? Well, just about all of us have, right? And you go to an event like that, and maybe there's 150 people there, and the main problem is you got 150 people with their sales hats on and 0 people with their buying hats on. And you end up going home with a pile of cards thinking that you maybe had some kind of a successful event. And the next day you start phoning them. And how long does it take until you figure out that they're all totally ice cold calls? And it's so damned unsatisfying. I really don't like that. So that's one of the problems. So I think the key is in the definition is that it's, people that maybe I can help in some way first, and maybe they can help me in some way second. Not necessarily sell to each other or buy from each other, but help in some way. So my next piece, I want to take 3 pieces all at once. Who can we network with? And here's my caveat to this one, is you can't say everyone or anyone. You have to be more specific than that. And then my second piece is, where can you network? And again, you cannot say everywhere or anywhere. And so where can you network? And I mean that both in a formal place, where can we network more formally, and where can we network more informally? And now I'm going to throw that out to the group. And you can answer either of those questions. Who can you network with, or where can you network? And I want to come up with a very long list.
Network on LinkedIn.
So you can clearly network on social media. That is a place to network. Absolutely. They call it social networking for a reason. Okay, and then you said LinkedIn, let's assume that means all of social media. So we don't have to start naming individual ones. Where else or who else can you network with?
You can network at conferences.
You can absolutely network at conferences. And those can be conferences for your company or your industry where you're networking with your colleagues. I go to 3 Sandler conferences a year, and it's critical for me to do that. It's important to my business for the networking aspects alone. But you can also go to other conferences for other companies or other industries conferences. So I like that a lot. Good. Where else can you network?
I think if you're wearing your business's logo like you are, Kevin, you can network, running errands. You can meet people.
You can network running errands within some limits. Within some limits, the answer to that is yes. Where else before I start naming a few?
Within professional organizations and social organizations?
All sorts of professional and social organizations that you belong to, your trade association, your clients' trade associations, social associations, organizations where you do your volunteer work is a great place to network. Any other social organizations that you belong to, whether they be religious or any other associations. Oh, here's another one. How about church or synagogue? It's an interesting thing. If you go to church on a regular basis, the other people around you notice. And all of a sudden that, you realize, first of all, it's great bonding. You've got a lot in common. You believe the same stuff, preached by the same person in the same amount. And it doesn't take too long before, you're walking back to the parking lot after the sermon and somebody says, hey, do you want to grab some lunch? And that's great. Although what I always say is, if you go to church just for that reason, you will go to hell. Okay, who else and where else?
I would say also fraternities or sororities, as well as boards in nonprofits.
I'm sorry, Fernando, I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me better now?
Let's try again.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, I was saying fraternities or sororities, and something that I've been trying lately is volunteering to be part of boards and nonprofits. I know they need professionals and they need diversity, so that definitely expand the network that you have. And I recently moved from New York to DC 2 years ago, so that's been working fairly well for me so far. Absolutely.
I like some of that. I like a lot of that. How about places like, especially for the women, where not to be too sexist here, but where you get your hair and nails done? A lot of networking goes on there. Obviously, that's not a big thing for me, but actually, I do get my hair cut once in a while. And I have done networking with the woman that cuts my hair, because hair cutters know everybody. How about the gym, right? When we get back to the gym, right? What I always say is, if you can get naked in front of somebody, you can ask them what they do for a living. And I think that's true at some level, at some very basic level. How many of you, for those of you that have your cameras on, how many of you, show of hands, belong to a formal networking group? All right, I would argue that everybody on this call should belong to a networking group. Things like BNI and LATIP and hundreds of independent groups. I happen to be a fan more of the independent groups than the franchise groups, but some of them are excellent also. And these are groups where people get together on anywhere from a weekly to a monthly basis, purely for the only reason of getting to know each other well enough that you can be comfortable passing leads back and forth and helping each other grow their business. And if you can be comfortable enough to refer business to someone, that's hard to do. You have to get to know them first. It's hard to just refer somebody to refer somebody you've just met. They've got to build some trust somewhere. So joining networking groups is important. You know, at some level, there's something called, and this is something that I don't want to overstate. In fact, I want to understate it. There's something we sometimes call the 3-foot rule. Anytime you get close enough to somebody that you could reach out and touch them, you could say hello and introduce yourself. Now, I think you can take that to the extreme. I don't network with people when I'm online at the supermarket. Yeah, I have met people while, you know, squeezing melons in the fruits and vegetable department. I have done that because I seem to know what I'm doing, and people ask me how to pick a melon, and that leads to conversation, which leads to, so what do you do when you're not in the fruit department? And so that has happened. I'm one of those people that believes that if you're in the middle seat on an airplane, you have an obligation to turn left and turn right and say hello and introduce yourself. And not to be a pest and not to be a pain and not to bother people. But what I know is I can't look you in the eye and tell you that I've gotten real business from doing that, but I've had conversations with people that led to prospects that could have led to business from doing that. I'll give you, here's a piece, I think the important piece. You have to have your antenna up all the time. There's probably nobody on this call that remembers My Favorite Martian. Does anybody remember that show? Trina, you do not.
A little bit I do, yeah.
You saw it on Nick at Night. You do not remember that show. Anyway, it was this show when I was a little kid with, I'm blanking on the guy's name, who played the Martian. And it was a real that was high technology. He had like old TV rabbits that came out of his head.
Yeah, Ray Walston.
Ray Walston, thank you, was the Martian. And he could make himself invisible. I feel like I'm Ray Walston. You have to have your antenna up all the time. And I'll tell you my favorite story that really proves that it can happen anywhere. Now this is going to sound like one of the biggest oxymorons you've ever heard. I was at a bar mitzvah in Kansas. And those are two words that don't seem to go together, but they do. And in the middle of the party, I went over to the bar to get a drink, and my antenna were down. I wasn't thinking. And a woman came over to me and said, "You must be Lloyd's friend from New Jersey." And I said, "Okay, and you must be his friend who knows everybody else here." And we started chatting, and she said, "And what do you do?" And I gave her a 2-word answer that's normally not what I do. I never say that, but I wasn't thinking about it as any kind of an opportunity. And I just said, "Oh, I do sales training." And she said, "Do you ever work with insurance agents?" And it was like, the antenna popped up. And I said, "Okay, why do you ask?" And it turns out her son in New York had recently gotten licensed, was really struggling. And a week later, I had a client from a bar mitzvah in Kansas. That's just, I still love that story. So do we get it that it theoretically could happen anywhere? Theoretically could happen with anybody. Oh, here's another one. Remind me of this before we leave on a piece of technique. How many of you, again, quick show of hands, have the head trash that I used to have when I was younger that says don't mix business and pleasure? And how many, or let me ask it a different way. How many of you have friends and family that don't fully understand what you do for a living? How's that one? Right? Inexcusable. These are the people that literally love you and would help you if they knew how, but you've never had the conversation with them. So remind me when we get to the end to tell you how to have that conversation. So let's talk about how to do it more effectively. I want to start by, and I'm going to assume that we're at a networking event of some sort. I want to talk about some do's and don'ts first. First is, do not drink. I hate to be preachy. I promise you there's no one on this call that enjoys it more than I do. I'm a wine collector. I promise you I imbibe on a regular basis. maybe even a little more than I should, but never when I'm out networking. And don't tell me it makes it more comfortable for you to go talk to a stranger. That's crap. And because here's the reality, you are not as sharp after one drink as you were before it. And you are on call. This is business. It's not pleasure. And if you're there for networking, be straight. And I mean that in every way I can. So enough preaching. Do not hang out with the food. Do not hang where the food is coming out so you get the hors d'oeuvres while they're hot. And do not hang out with your friends and the people you know. I can't tell you how I see people all the time from the same company wearing shirts with the same logo, all hanging out together all night at a networking event. Let's just say they're defeating the purpose. You are there to meet new people. You are not there to hang out. If you see somebody that you know and you have a good relationship with, it's fine to go over and say hello, but it's a hello. It's maybe a 2-minute conversation, but then it's time to move on. A really quick thing, let's talk about name tags. If you pre-register for a networking event, live networking event, when you get there, there will be a name tag with your first name, last name, and company name on it. And there's also, for those people who didn't pre-register, there is always a bunch of blank stick-on ones that, like there's little ones that go here that say, hello, my name is, right? That little thing, and a magic marker. Always use that one. Take that one, and all I write is my first name, Kevin. And I do that for a number of reasons. Why do you think I only use my first name?
They have to ask you more questions.
They have to ask me more questions. They have to ask me what I do for a living. I swear to you, I've seen this happen at a networking event. I'm not sure how well this will work on Zoom with the camera, but I've seen this happen at a networking event. I've seen someone walk up to somebody and go, nah, and turn around and walk away. Now, but it's true. If you are, for example, and we may have a couple on today, if you're the accountant or the attorney, how many people want to talk to want to go talk to an accountant or an attorney at a networking event, right? Everybody already has an accountant, they already have an attorney, and I'm sorry, accountants and attorneys that are on this call, but so don't put what you do on, especially if your company name announces what you do. All right, I have 2 company names. I also use the name Schulman and Associates, but if I use Schulman and Associates, people think I'm a law firm. So I take that off. There are other reasons. When I just put the word Kevin there, it's bigger. It fills up the whole thing so people can see it from further away. It makes me more approachable. And it says I'm a first name kind of guy, and that makes me a little more approachable. By the way, another really small thing is your name tag belongs on your right side, not your left. Most people think it's like doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Your name tag belongs on the right side. There actually is a right and wrong side. If you go to any events, you'll see about 80 to 90% put it the wrong way. And there is a reason for that if anybody cares. So my first real question is, what is your goal at a networking event? When you go to an event, you should have a goal. You should be able to know when you leave, did you do a good job or did you do a bad job? Did you accomplish what you set out to do? What kind of a goal, what's an appropriate goal when you go to a networking event? And that was not rhetorical.
To make genuine connections?
To make genuine connections, maybe. Maybe that might be more of a wish than a goal, but I'm okay with that.
Maybe identifying marketing needs.
Identifying marketing needs, if you're a marketing person, maybe, but that sounds like you're trying to sell them.
No, market, meaning what is it that people out there need so you can provide that products and services.
Okay, I get that. I want to make
people remember you. Sorry.
Do something so they say, or do something so they remember you. I like that. So here's what I think. I want to make it much simpler. I don't know if anybody's ever had this experience. I've been to some networking events that were just bad events with the wrong kind of people for me. It just wasn't a good group. It was what, for whatever reason, I thought it had some potential, it didn't. So I always have a goal. My goal is pretty simple. I want to have X number of conversations with people I've never met. That one's easy. And by the way, now some people are going to think I'm kidding, but I'm not. If you're like me, I'm very shy. I promise you I am. Give me a microphone and put me in, I've done programs at Madison Square Garden. Put me in front of hundreds or thousands of people and that's a turn on for me. Put me in a room full of strangers and tell me to go talk to them one-on-one and I'm the guy hugging the wall. I really don't like what I'm teaching you right now, but I know how to do it and I can force myself to do it. And I'll give you a trick to make it easier. But you really do have to do it. So if you're really shy, maybe and you've never done a networking event before, maybe your goal is to have 1 or 2 conversations. I will usually go, if a networking event is scheduled from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, maybe I give myself a goal of having 10 or 15 conversations with people I've never met. And if by 6:30 I've had 10 conversations and they've all gone nowhere, I can tell myself this is a bad group for me and I can leave. I've done my job and I can feel like I had a successful event. I've accomplished what I set out to accomplish. Now, if I have those 10 conversations in the first half hour or 45 minutes and 8 of them are just really good conversations, not necessarily that they're prospects for me, but just good conversations with good people that are worth knowing, then maybe I'm going to stay then maybe I raise my number from 10 to 20, or maybe I just decide I'm going to stay to the end. But my goal is to have a certain number of conversations. So it's really easy for me to accomplish that because it's based just on me. Based just on me. By the way, if you are like me and you're that shy person, here's my little trick. All right. I love this little trick. I do it all the time. I call it daisy chaining. And here's what I do. I can always muster up the courage to go say hello to one person. I can always muster up that much courage. And sometime at the beginning, I promise you it took a lot. Today it's easier for me, but I can get that much courage. And I can go so I go talk to Trina and we have a lovely conversation. When we get done, here's what I say. Trina, can I ask you a favor? Can you introduce me to someone else at this event that you know that I don't? And she walks me over to Leah. And now I have a conversation with Leah. And first of all, now it's a referral. It feels like it's warmer and fuzzier. It's not talking to a stranger anymore. And I have this great conversation with Leah. And when we're done, I say, Leah, this has been great. Would you do me a favor and introduce me to someone else here that you know that I don't? And I just get daisy chained around the room. And it's wonderful. And they're little mini referrals, but they're great. They're absolutely great. Next, I want to, how many of you will know what I'm talking about if I talk about Emerson's Law? Anybody ever hear of Emerson's Law? Any guesses on which Emerson? Right, there was the electronics guy. There was, I'm going to date myself, but if Trina remembers my favorite Martian, at least she'll remember this as well, the greatest keyboardist of my era, right? Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And for those of you who are too young and don't know who Emerson, Lake and Palmer is, your homework assignment is to download any album by Emerson, Lake and Palmer and learn. And not the one-time running back for the New York Jets, if anybody's old enough to remember that Emerson, but rather, obviously, Ralph Waldo. And somewhere in the library, there's a book called Emerson's Essays. And inside it is his essay on compensation. And I encourage you not to read it. It is the most tedious 20 pages that was ever written. But I can boil it down to 6 words that can literally change your life if you take them to heart. And as a very wise man once said to me, anytime someone tells me they've got 5 or 6 words that can change your life, maybe you want to write them down. So here's the 6 words. It's Emerson's law. If you want more, give more. If you want more, give more. Now, if you believe that because it's biblical, that's great. If you believe that because it's metaphysical, you believe that that's how the universe works, as I do, that's great. If you believe it because I said so, and that's a fine reason as well, that's also great. So what I know is that the more referrals I give, the more I get. And so I want to tell you a story. About 10 years or so ago, my main goal was to do more of my volunteer work. I was finding that I wasn't doing as much as I liked. I had moved to the Jersey Shore, and my volunteer work is in New York. And being able to get there after work made the drive home a lot longer. And driving home late at night, for an hour and a half didn't make me excited. And weekends were always busy. So I was finding I was doing less and less of my volunteer work. So I decided I wanted to get my business life down to 4 days a week. That was my goal, get my business. I was doing my goal setting at the end of the year. And part of that goal was my company had to continue to grow at the rate it was growing, and my personal production had to continue to grow at the rate it was growing. And I didn't want to work more hours every day. So I wanted to work 20% less, but keep my growth on target. And I put a number of things in place to make that happen. But the biggest change I made was I took a giant leap of faith in Emerson's law. And I made a commitment that I still try to live up to today. And that is, I try to give at least one good quality referral every day. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I got to push it. I push the limits of what's a referral, but I mean it. And the way I joke about it is that it took Emerson a few months to realize that I was serious. But since then, I really don't remember going more than 2 or 3 days without my phone ringing and someone on the other end saying, hey, Kevin, I was told I had to call you that you might be able to help me. Or someone saying, hey, Kevin, I've got someone you need to talk to. And I know that's because I give referrals. I've become a natural giver, and people know that about me. And I don't expect them back from the people I give them to. Sometimes they come back from the people I give them to. That's nice. And sometimes we have referring relationships that go back and forth. In fact, sometimes I formalize those relationships. But if you just give them freely without expecting anything back, it somehow travels around the universe and comes back and hits you on the back of the head with another referral. And so I love talking about Emerson's law. Really love doing it. Let me give you a little bit. I want to give you a little bit about how to do it when you meet somebody. When I walk up to Leah and say, hey, what do you do? And we start to have that conversation at a networking event. I want to give you some specifics on how to do it. And then I want to give you the magic words that get them to fall in love with you in under 30 seconds. And if only I'd known this when I was single. So when I meet Leah, here's the most important thing. By hook or by crook, I don't care how you do it, you need to get her to go first. You need to get the other person to tell you about what they do before it's your turn. Now that's critical. And I would say that happens for me 99 times out of 100. 1%, I find somebody that gets insistent that I go first, and it's not worth the argument. But most people are there to tell their story. They want to blab. And even if they come over and say, so, hey, Kevin, what do you do? I just say, you know, Joy, I was just about to ask you that. Why don't you go first? And she says, sure. And she starts launching in. All right. It doesn't take much to get the other person to go first. And as she's going and telling me what she does, I am listening. I am listening. I'm paying attention. The problem with going first is most of the time the other person's not listening. They're thinking about what they're going to say when it's their turn. So that's yet another reason why it's a problem. But I'm listening, and I'm thinking of Do I really know anybody who might be good for her? That's one of the first things I'm thinking about. Who do I know that might be good for her? And how great would it be, and this is the best when it happens, if I say, you know, I know somebody that's here tonight that I need to introduce you to before we're done that might be a good person for you. And that's wonderful when that happens. What also is going through my head is I'm going through, I'm doing some sort bys. I'm trying to figure out, where does she fit? Is she A, a prospect for me? B, am I a prospect for her? Is she somebody who I may know somebody that I can refer her to in either direction, either that she would be a prospect for, or that they would be a prospect for her? Does she maybe work for someone who's a prospect for me? I get that a lot. And so, and I get to know about what she does, so I know where she fits for me, because my prospects fall into a number of different buckets. I've got a lot of different kinds of people I work with. And so when it's time for me to give my 30-second commercial, now I can give her a commercial that's wrapped around her, that's based upon what she does, not just the, you see, if I came out at the beginning of this program today, and I didn't start this way, and just gave my 30-second commercial, it would have to be generic, right? We've got 26 people on, and that do all sorts of different things. Some are business owners, some are employees, some are the so-called professions. They're attorneys, accountants, architects, and engineers. Some work in public service. We've got all sorts of different people. And I would have to give my most generic commercial. But after I hear what Joy does, now I can give her my specific commercial. So you have to have a lot of, you can imagine that my 30-second commercial is very different for a senior partner at a law firm than it is for a newly minted insurance agent at a large insurance agency. So I've got many different commercials, and you have to know that and be good at that. And that's something you have to practice, is your 30-second commercial. Now, let me tell you how to get them to love you in under 30 seconds. She starts telling me about her business, and I listen, and I always ask a couple of questions to show her that I'm paying attention. And then I ask the magic question. Here's the magic question. Joy, would you tell me what your ideal prospect looks like so I might recognize them if I see them? And in that moment, it's love. And here's the problem with that. Here's the good news and the bad news. The problem with it is you better be prepared for a little bit of silence, because most people have never stopped to consider how they would describe their ideal client. And be comfortable with that silence. Even if that silence lasts for a minute or two, let her work it out and come up with an answer. Now, the good news, what I love about that question, now that I've asked it, what is she now socially obligated to ask me when it's my turn? The very same thing. And you can be damn sure I've thought of a good answer to that question. I know the answer to that question. And in fact, I've got a lot of different answers to that question based on who she is and what I know about her and who she's likely to know. Does all that make sense? Last piece before I get to the ultra practical. I could take the next hour, and we don't have an hour. We've only got about 20 minutes. And I'd like to leave some time for Q&A. Please rework your 30-second commercial. When someone asks you what you do not start with your job description. I never use the word sales or training in my commercial. It's not that I'm ashamed of them. It's not that I have a problem. It's just that every person on this planet is prejudiced in the sense that they prejudge. They hear what you do and they instantly make a decision as to whether you are someone that they want to talk to or not. They instantly make decisions and you don't want them to do that. Hi, I'm an accountant or I'm an accountant at the firm of blah, blah, blah. They immediately make a decision that, oh my God, he's going to try to sell me on accounting. That's the last thing I want to do. How can I get away from this? Right? I don't want them to do that. Way different than to, here's the other problem with it. Most of our commercials are all about us. They're all self-centered, or what I call I-centered. They should be prospect-centered. I work with people who, I work with companies that, and then list some of the problems that you help people solve. Much more interesting, much more likely to get their attention. And you've got to practice it because it sounds different coming out of your mouth than the other kind of commercial. Okay, next. For those people taking notes, that now is really, and those, let me rephrase it. For those of you not taking notes, now's the time to grab a piece of paper, because I want you to leave here with between 10 and 20 real live people that you can network with over the next couple of months. And I promise if you do this, it will make you some money. My problem, of course, is I don't know which 3 or 4 of you will actually do it. Although actually, if you're one of the 3 or 4 that do it, please find a way to contact me and let me know that you did that. That makes me, you will absolutely make my day. So first list, I want you to write down the names of between 2 and 5 people that are current or past clients of yours that you haven't spoken to in at least a few months. Just take a minute, think about some names, current and past clients of yours that you haven't spoken to in at least a few months. Next set. I call this the jealousy group. Jot down 2 to 5, the names of 2 to 5 people that you know other than direct competitors, the names of 2 to 5 people you know whose client list you covet. There's a great word you don't get to use very often. Whose client list you covet. And just jot down 2 to 5 names. Okay, we got that one done. Here's the next one. I called this the benefit group. This one is hard for some people, and if you can't think of anybody, that's okay if it doesn't really fit for you. Who benefits when you get a client? So, for example, when a realtor sells a house, well, there's probably a banker that's going to benefit. There's probably a title company that's going to benefit. There may be a lawn guy that benefits. There's a home inspector company that's going to benefit. A lot of people benefit when a realtor makes a sale. Who benefits when you get a new client? Okay, the next group. People you like, and let me define that. People, jot down the names of 2 to 5 people who have given you referrals in the last few months. And damn straight you like those people. Everyone's got it? And the last group are people that like you. Jot down 2 to 5 people that you have given referrals to in the last couple of months. Because you can bet they do like you. Okay, everybody's got it? If you did that right, you've got, if you did as little as 2 per category, you've got 10. If you actually got it up to 5, you've got 25 names. There might be some overlap, and that's okay. So here's what I want you to do. If you only got 4 or 5, for the next few weeks, call 1 a week. If you've got 25, call 2 a week. And just call them up. They will all take your call. They all know you. And say, hey, it's been a while, haven't spoken. Would it make sense for us to either, now that masks are starting to come off, would it make sense for us to go out and grab a bite, grab some lunch, grab some coffee? Or can we maybe set up a half-hour Zoom? Would love to just reconnect and touch base and see how we can maybe help each other. I promise you, if you've got 20 or 25 of those, you keep that list on your desk, make 2 calls a week. In 2 or 3 months, you will have more business. Almost guaranteed you will have more business. It would be hard to screw it up. Worst case, you will find plenty of opportunities to give some referrals. And that's always a plus. I have an accountability partner who, by the way, how many people here have an accountability partner? You absolutely should. If you don't, how many people aren't, just give me a quick show of, I mean, we only have about half a dozen people who have their cameras on. How many people, just show of hands, aren't sure what I mean by an accountability partner and want to know? Okay, thank you, Sue, for being straight, for being honest. An accountability partner is someone that you speak to on a regular basis who holds you accountable for doing the things you need to do in your business. My accountability partner and I we get on the phone at 6:30 every Tuesday morning and have for about 5 or 6 years now. And the conversation goes something like this. Yeah, first we get through how'd your week go last week? And we do a little bit of pleasantries and a little bit of just reporting on what business we did. And then he says things like, last week you said you were going to do A, B, C, D, and E. Did you do all that? And if not, why the hell not? And I do the same for him. And amongst other things, one of the questions he asks me is, how many referrals did you give last week? Because he knows that that's something that I want to hold myself accountable to, and I never want to be able to have to look him in the eye and give him a number under 5. I want to average 1 a day, and I know that's good for me and it's good for my business. Okay, questions on everything we've done so far? Okay, what I'd like to do with the time we have left, we've got about 12, 14 minutes left, is open up to Q&A on networking. And happy to take it in slightly outside of that arena as well.
What do you suggest if you're new to an area? Like, I'm new to DC.
Got it. Well, there are a bunch of people on this call. Charles is a great resource, typically, I'm not a big fan of local chambers, but my understanding is there's a couple of chambers in DC that are pretty good. Look for networking. If you just put networking DC into Google, I guarantee you'll get hundreds and hundreds of hits. and look for events. And once you go to events, start talking to people about what networking groups do they belong to. Do they belong to a good group? And because I really believe in formal networking groups, but good groups are hard to find. They're really hard to find. And they're just starting to get off of Zoom, and some are going to stay on Zoom permanently. There are some advantages and disadvantages to networking online. And you just got an answer from Charles. So I said, didn't I say he was your best resource?
Yes.
And get involved with the SBDC, certainly. But where was I going with that? Talk to other people, because online it's become difficult, but there are so many networking groups online and so many networking events online that they've become relatively easy to find. Okay. And so just go attend a whole bunch of events, and go as a guest to almost every group will let you go as a guest at least once or twice. And then finally nailed it. Clearly, you can also look up BNI and LATIP. LATIP is LE, not LA. And that's worth looking at, because again, while I'm not a fan of those two groups, there are some very good branches of it. So that's worth looking at.
All right, thank you.
And a very good point Charles just made is a lot of national trade associations are based in DC, and they host all sorts of events. Oh, I know. I'm sorry, I'm going to change the subject on you, Trina. One of the things I said is dealing with friends and family. And I said, I'll tell you how to do that, right? And this is, if you have anybody that's friend or family that you answered yes, when I asked, do you have any of those people that don't fully understand what you do for a living? My answer is shame on us, right? There's no excuse for that. These are the people that genuinely love us. They'd help us if they could. I love doing this with small groups, one-on-one. Sometimes I've done this with 3 other guys sitting at a bar in a booth, just having drinks and something to eat. And here's what it sounds like. It's really pretty simple. It's who's out there? Sue. Sue, you and I have been friends for, it feels like forever. Obviously, it's been a little bit shorter. What now? About half an hour. But we've been friends for a very long time. And it occurs to me that we never talk business. And listen, the last thing I want to do is have you try to sell me or me try to sell you. But could you take 5 or 10 minutes and tell me a lot more about your business, and more importantly, who you do it for and who your ideal client is? Because I might know somebody that could help you, because I know an awful lot of people in my world. And if I could help you, I'd love to, but I don't know how. And then if it makes sense, I'd like to take 5 minutes and tell you a little bit more about what I do and who I do it for, because maybe you know some people that can help me. And would that make sense? And then 15, 20 minutes from now, we can go on our way, and I'll still love you either way, and we never have to talk business again. Is there anybody that you couldn't have that conversation with? That's such an easy conversation to have. Now, here's the hard part. Here's the part that's difficult. When she realized, now this doesn't happen often, but when she realizes that she really could use what I've got. And she says, wait a minute, I didn't fully understand what you did. I think I could use you. I think I may be your prospect. Here's the hard part. I have to look her in the eye and say, Sue, I appreciate that, but that's not why I did that. It's not why I suggested we have this conversation. If you're serious, then let's have a conversation during business hours, because that's business. This is friends. I love you. I'm not here to sell you anything. But if you're serious and want to have that conversation, glad to have it during business hours. All right. And make sure you're comfortable having that conversation, because if you're not, I fully understand. right? That's hard to say when you smell a prospect across the table from you. But that makes you much more sincere. And you know the old story, when you can't be sincere, fake it. Okay, any other questions on networking or anything related to networking?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Two. Yes, I have two questions. So the first one, is there any?
You've been off camera all this time. You think you get two questions?
Okay, I could turn on my camera. Well, I'm in front of the window, but hopefully you guys can.
Here, you see, now you get two questions.
Thank you. So my first question was, or is there anything in particular I should look for when looking to join a networking group? Namely, like as far as size, demographics, would you say that any and all networking groups are more or less ranked equally?
No.
Okay, so I don't know if
absolutely not. It depends on who you're looking to work with. Okay. For me, in my world, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not particularly enamored of LaTip, is LaTip is filled with salespeople. That's who they appeal to. I want a networking group that's filled with business owners. Most of my clients are small to mid-sized business owners. I live mostly in entrepreneurial America. So I'm looking for a networking group that is within my geography. And so because if it's not virtual, it's a live group, what I don't want to do is be driving an hour and a half just to go to a networking group, especially if it's going to be fairly regular. If I'm making a commitment to, if I might be making a commitment to go every week or every 2 weeks or once a month, I don't want to do that drive if I don't have to. So I'd like to make it within a tight geography. And now, on the other hand, if your business is selling to salespeople, then a group like LaTip may be perfect for you. So I want to look at the roster of who they are. Not so much are they good prospects for me? Is their industry the kind of industries that I work well with? But I want them to be business owners, because business owners refer to other business owners. Business owners hang out with other business owners. And so that's how I look at it. So think about what it is you're looking for and try to define it as best you can. I kind of go to geography and business owners. And
that's helpful. Thank you.
And what's second question?
The second one goes back to what you were stating about name tag placement. So I was curious, like, why does it matter whether it's the right or the left?
So reach out your hand to shake my hand. Reach out your hand. Shake my hand, right? Reach towards the camera, right? We're shaking hands. If you have it over your heart, over your left side, I have to do this to try to read it.
Okay.
But if it's over your right side, my eye goes straight up your arm and I read it. So as I'm saying hello, I go, oh, hello, Renee. And my eye just naturally goes straight up your arm. And so there really is a right side and a wrong side. You know, it's not like it's a cardinal sin. Obviously, you know, I said you'll find 80 to 90% have it on the wrong side. And it's not like they're not good networkers, but it does make a difference. It's one of those things that it's a small thing, but it's a thing.
Got it. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And you're most welcome. Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left. Anything else? Or I'm going to give you back the gift of time. I'm going to give you four minutes of your life back. What I would tell you is if there's anybody that is interested in having further conversation with me, if you were not in the program last week and you'd like to attend a sales training program as my guest, go into the chat and just give me your name and phone number and I'll make that happen. And if you were in last week's, and you think it might make sense for us to chat because you think maybe I can help you in some way, go into the chat and leave me your name and phone number. And I promise you'll get a call from me between now and, well, we've got a long weekend coming up between now and next Tuesday or Wednesday. And obviously no obligation with any of that. And other than that, I thank you sincerely. You get 3 minutes of your life back. I thank you. This was actually fun. I enjoyed it.